Morning, everyone. So I arrived yesterday afternoon and was able to attend the reception last night. Very nice. The awards from people who've been working in their communities for decades to some young people just coming into urban forestry and urban greening. And then this morning, which I often do when I'm in a new city, a place that I don't know that well, I went out for a walk. And it's a great way to get to know a place, see the architecture, enjoyed a little walk along the river and whatnot. But coming back, I stopped at Panera. And on the door, there's a little note that says, we're looking for employees. And it's requesting people who have a contagious enthusiasm. That's this group, contagious enthusiasm. I sensed it last night, I sense it now, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you through the rest of the day. I will be here and look forward to talking with you if you have any follow-up questions or comments or suggestions about some of the things that I'll share with you today. Urban forest benefits. I suspect that, again, because of the quality of the public outreach and communications that Trees Forever has generated, that I see out in the foyer, on your tables, in your packets, that you're aware of much of this benefit information that's been derived from research. But I'm hoping that I have a little more to fuel your conversations with leaders in your communities, those people that make key decisions about budget and the resources that are dedicated to trees. And as we just heard, the research often, intuitively you hear it, and it's like, well, of course. But nonetheless, having numbers and science, evidence, can be quite helpful in sort of bolstering your message. And unfortunately for many people, trees are just a background sort of thing. If they're taken away, sometimes then people respond and realize just how valuable they are in their lives. But for the most part, many people go on day after day without realizing all of the things that trees, parks, open spaces, trails, and whatnot do for us. And one way of framing this is gaining ever more attention, this idea of ecosystem services. And this is a very human-oriented outlook to natural resources. It's the idea that we derive our basic health, welfare, our dependencies are all nature-derived, our food, our water, air, all of that. And the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment was an international effort to assess and document these ecosystem services. They include supporting services, provisioning services, regulating, and what really bugs me as a social science, cultural services, that tiny little box on the bottom. But what I hope to do in these next few minutes is to convince you that in the urban context, in our urban communities, our towns, our cities, our villages, that those cultural ecosystem services, that box might be even bigger than all of those other boxes. So here's one example. Of course, there's a lot of interest, some concern about climate change, and we're talking about the Earth's or regional temperatures changing by several degrees and certain consequences. I suggest to you that climate change has been going on in cities for a very long time, on a daily basis, particularly on a day like today. I'm out on my walk this morning, things are heating up. There will be a spike late today in the temperature across this downtown area, and it can even, depending on various climate conditions, weather conditions of the day and the time, that heat effect can actually extend over the landscape beyond the city core. One reason this happens is we just have huge areas of parking, and I'm not picking on a particular big box store here. This is not uncommon to have these very large paved areas with very few trees, so I really commend Hy-Vee for considering reforesting or conserving trees where the stores are going in. And so often we have to sort of accept. We know better, but we sort of have to accept that this is the way things are done. And the amount of heat generated by a space like this was brought to me very personally while I was in grad school. A good friend of mine is a glider pilot trainer, and so these are the planes without engines. And he said, Kathy and Clancy, my husband, would you like to go up? Yes, we would, of course. So we're up. I don't know if you've ever been in one of these planes, or kites, but you travel up, and you're towed up by a small plane, and then all of a sudden you hit a lever, and this hook and line drift away. And then you're floating, you're up in the air, you're floating about. And so our friend Matt, very good glider pilot, he's been doing this for years, and we were some distance from the airport and we're down. Matt, what happens now? You know, do we look for the nearest cornfield? And he said, no. So we found one of these parking lots. What's happening over one of these parking lots in Michigan in the summer? We've got heat currents rising up. So he glides over one of these, we gain several hundred feet of altitude, and away we go again across the landscape. And we drop down a bit and find another parking lot, up. So what I thought would be several minutes of glide became several hours. And that is what the consequence is the heat absorption and re-emittance, particularly from dark pavements, boosts local temperatures. There is hope. I love, as I travel about and have these opportunities to speak and share with groups, is there are wonderful examples of options, of the choices that our communities can make. And this is one example from Hilton Head, where Walmart did indeed conserve a substantial number of trees in their parking area. And just to prove that this is not an entrance to a park, there you see the Walmart cart. And one drives through this beautiful, lush greenery, and that is the parking lot. We are at the main entrance of the store, looking out. And what's significant here is not only is there conservation of trees, but soils. Because soils, of course, as you know, if soils are compacted, then it's almost equivalent to pavement in terms of water runoff and the ability for those trees to thrive. So soils are conserved, vegetation is conserved, and some really interesting things were done with paving. So pervious concrete, some at the back of the lot where there is less traffic, some gravel, compacted gravel, so there's more permeable paving. So we know, we've heard, you've read about environmental benefits, economic benefits. As a social scientist, I enjoy and have come to do a bit of research about human health and well-being, but I'm not going to focus on my own projects, really. I'm going to share with you across really a great body of literature some of the highlights. And knowing about environmental benefits, those seem to be very central and primary messages now, particularly stormwater management. So here is a place, for example, by intention, by design, a new county office complex. They decided that the entire site would be managed for stormwater management with the goal of not having any more runoff than one would have with natural conditions. And in 4 years' time, success beyond their wildest dreams in terms of the plants growing, not only plants growing, but the containment and management of the water coming off the buildings, coming off the pavings. And we have tools to assess these benefits, environmental benefits, iTree. You may have heard about this tool or used it in your own community, offered by the USDA Forest Service. And what the tool does, in a nutshell, this takes months to do. But first of all, an assessment of the structure of the forest by sampling, measurement, sometimes remote sensing using aerial photographs or other tools. Then from that, you understand the function, the various functions of that forest, be it stormwater, air quality, energy savings. From that, you can start to post a value for maybe not individual trees, maybe yes, maybe no, but more definitely or more certainly the value of the forest canopy across an area. And then management. So once you understand what you have, it's much easier then to apply management practices and make the most of that resource and those amenities. And I offer to you, as a social scientist, that nature can multitask really well. We believe that we can multitask, but cognitive psychologists are telling us not really. You know, if you're in a meeting and you got the BlackBerry or the smartphone going and maybe cell phones, some calls are coming in and you think you can manage all of that, you're really not doing it all that well, according to some scientific studies. But I offer you that nature can indeed multitask. So for instance, we have here, this was again a design for stormwater management in this residential complex. And so water is being used, reused, collected before going into pipes and drains. And that center planting there is a depression. It's a rain garden. And And so water's being managed on site, but it's also offering a very pleasant place for people to meet, to talk, to spend time outdoors. And with that comes a variety of benefits that I'll talk about a little bit more. So nature in this case is multitasking, and some people who are working in urban ecosystems and urban ecology are now talking about hyper-functional nature. It can do stormwater management, it can do energy savings, it can do depression reduction in humans, it can promote active living and physical activity. And that's, if we can think about designing for these bundle of benefits, that's where we gain the biggest bang for the buck with urban forestry, urban greening, parks and trails. So there are various fantastic sort of images of the city emerging from urban planning and architecture firms, bold, dramatic buildings, new cities, that type of thing. Some of these are starting to emerge, they're starting to be built. Are they feasible or reasonable? Well, I don't know, maybe not in Des Moines, maybe in China, some of these huge cities are going in. But I offer to you that within our communities, we do have options to retrofit. So it's not only with new development, conserving plants and conserving green space, but to retrofit what we already have in our midst. So here in South Korea is an example, a remarkable example. Check this out, the volume of traffic, the freeway, and this is that space now. Freeway removed. There's still stormwater management, so there's surface water here, but there are also engineering devices to collect water and move it through the city in a reasonable amount of time and space. But this, despite initial public criticism, in part because of the price tag on this project, but now it is one of the most cherished parts of this city. And so hearing about these things, as I said, for me, they offer a view of what could be, not to adopt them literally, not to do the same thing, not to cookie cutter attempt, but to look around one's community and say, what are the opportunities here? As I walked about this morning, this city has some very, very wide streets. Maybe a little road diet time, huh? Pull in the width of those lanes, offering some more space on the edges of the streets, maybe a little more space for pedestrians, cafes, and cycling. There again, wonderful space, day and used all times of the day and night. All right, so intuitively, as introductory comments, intuitively we know that nature provides a great deal of benefit, but what is the evidence? And you may hear about occasional studies. Where do you find that stuff? Students of mine were in one of the best research universities in the nation, and they even have a difficult time finding some of these references. So what we've done, thank you Forest Service, USDA Forest Service, what we've done is to collect these articles about human health and well-being benefits of nature in cities, and to compress what are often several hundred articles into an essay summary based on a variety of themes that emerged in the literature. And these are gradually coming up, or gradually posting each of these summaries. The way that each page is set up, you see on the left there, the column, these are the various topics. And within those then, you get a very short blurb. We have found that fast facts, that people want that instant bit of information to put in their newsletters and other communications. So we found the highlights, or we bring up the highlights of the fast facts, and then a longer essay follows with full citation, all the original article citations, if you have need to go back to that information. So we've been working on this now close to 3 years, and here in one slide is the summary of 3 years of work. To my great surprise, when we started this project and I made the pitch to the Forest Service, I suggested that we would find 600-800 articles. We're now up to more than 2,400 articles. The pace of publication of this information is astounding. It's growing by leaps and bounds. And Mary's probably seen that in the journal that she edits, and in her own work and in her own research community. But to explain this chart, so on the left again are the topics that you find on the website, and we did a content analysis of abstracts and titles from an initial collection of these articles, and then these were the topics that emerged. So for each topic, there's a bar, and the bar represents the percentage of the entire collection that set of articles represent. So, and there are some topics that double load, or some articles that double load. So for instance, there are articles writing about, say, children and active living and the presence of green. So those would double load on active living and, where is it up there? Life cycle, do we have life cycle? The life cycle and gender. Another part of these bars that really surprised me, if you look within each bar, there are different colors, and those colors indicate the decade or the time period of publication. Look what has happened since the year 2000 in terms of the volume of publication. You are sitting on an explosion of interest and recognition of the necessity for green spaces in our cities. And so we're hoping that this tool will aid you in continuing to endorse and continuing to compel people in your communities to contribute and to be a part of greening projects. So here we are, the acknowledgements, University of Washington, of course, USDA Forest Service, so helpful, and various NGOs, and then 2 graduate students. What would we do without graduate students in academia? Katrina and Marianne have been so helpful. Katrina's now in an urban planning master's program at University of Pennsylvania, and Marianne is starting her PhD program this fall at Portland State University in Oregon. So I'm sort of like a proud mom with them. You know, they're going on and doing great things. Here's another tool that you might find helpful, the Ecohealth Relational Browser. This was released within the past year by the EPA. And they have taken a similar set of content, of publications, scientific peer-reviewed publications, and their sorting system is quite different and another way of gaining access to this literature. So if you go to the website and you click on those bubbles, each of the bubbles then expands into another set of bubbles. And so you see all of these different topics, all of them having to do with benefit associated with human contact with nature, largely in urban or city or town environments. Here you are, you can see kind of the top level sorting of this information. And another way of accessing it, there are drop-down menus that are sort the literature by topic or by theme. And in addition to all of this, all the citations within this collection then are presented on a page, so you can go to the bibliography if you want to search that or just glance at, again, the wealth of this literature. This is gaining ever more popular attention. Richard Liu, of course, called our attention to children and the need for nature. I heard that maybe my generation, your generation, were the last free-range children. It just doesn't happen in our cities anymore. Our communities may not be safe, may not even be the opportunity for kids to go out and just roam around and do those creative things that are part of childhood within the natural environment. Peter Kahn has written some very nice stuff about the human relationship with nature. Richard Liu, again, a more recent book oriented to communities and adults. Your Brain on Nature, some fascinating summaries there. Esther Sternberg is a physician who has been looking at the role of nature in healing spaces in hospitals and therapy situations. She was recently invited by the Pope to talk about this, to spend time and talk about this opportunity. Why do we have this affinity? Why do we connect to nature? Well, one thought is the biophilia hypothesis, the idea that because of our evolutionary background, we were dependent on nature for our very existence. The hunter-gatherer lifestyle that Helen suggested and we know about. Well, that dependence on nature and that hardwired capacity to make sense of it and look into it for those things, those basic needs, is still a part of us. And consequently, it suggested that we respond, for the most part, positively to nature because of our long dependence on it. And then Tim Beatley is at the University of Virginia, and I love his work because he's starting to translate all these ideas into built form. The biophilic city, how do we more completely, comprehensively introduce nature into our urban systems? So going back to this figure, what I'm going to do now is I could stand here for hours and talk about all sorts of examples from this figure. I don't have that much time, so let me provide a few highlights. And if you have any questions about any of those particular topics, again, I will be here through the day and would be happy to chat. Okay, workplace productivity. Much of this, of course, has economic consequences. And economists, resource economists, where they, at least in my community, my academic community, where they used to focus on growing trees, harvesting trees, timber products, fiber, all of those sorts of things. Now some of them are edging into this urban greening and economic consequence, and it's quite fun to see, for instance, workplace productivity and what we gain. So our evolution, you've seen these figures, we stand upright and but then we've moved back into a crouch. I have to keep I spend so much time on the computer, I have to keep reminding myself to stand up straight. And you may hear these, you see these fact bits of we have green and better work productivity, but what's going on? What's mediating that? And so here's one suggestion: attention restoration theory. Rachel and Stephen Catlin are at the University of Michigan, and they note that in our current lives, we have to pay attention to so many things. And if you're trying to focus on a task, be it writing or preparing a budget or whatever, we have to fend off so many other distractions around us. Other people talking, more email, cell phones ringing, somebody's talking about the latest game. It's just you gotta put all that aside, push it out. And so we experience cognitive fatigue. It takes a lot of effort to maintain that focus. What happens if you tire in that way? Well, you can get a little irritable with your colleagues. You're not so happy with those people any longer, or I have to get away to a place where it's quiet and I can get something done. Well, nature is part of the solution, not surprising. That's what we know from now several studies, is that having nature access, either physical access or a view in the workplace, can be quite valuable. And this particular study did not translate these outcomes or these findings to economics, but it's not too big a leap to make that connection. And Helen had a few numbers that suggested that some of those numbers are in place, or we do understand those things. So again, it's we can provide nature views. And there's good nature, if you will, and bad nature. I mean, we can optimize, again, this idea of multitasking, hyperfunction, we can optimize nature by using certain design elements. And there's a speaker later today who will talk a little bit more about design and healing and therapy and what works better. But being away for this particular situation, attention deficit and recovering of cognitive capacity, a sense of being away, so that there's some sense of separation of this park or this small pocket park, this small space from your work station. And then this is really key, soft fascination. So when we're working on a task, that is hard attention. There are things that we pay attention to, but they don't come easily. And so soft fascination are those things in our world that we look at easily. The breeze in the tree, watching birds, cloud structures, flowers, foliage texture, those sorts of things provide soft fascination. I have one very interesting, so Hawaiian well-being. My daughter just graduated and she attended university for 4 years in Honolulu. She would disagree with that well-being status based on her observation of lifestyles in Hawaii. But talk about soft fascination in that state. Rainforest, beach, just a lot of wonderful things. Extent. So is this space or is the nature surround, big enough that you feel that you're actually away a little bit? And it doesn't have to be huge, but again, if designed well, it can be a fairly small space where you feel that you have indeed moved away. And then a sense of compatibility. So if this is a place, for instance, where you would like to go to have lunch, you use your lunch break to get this nature break. Are there the facilities there where you can sit comfortably and enjoy your sandwich or enjoy your a cup of coffee? So compatibility, all of these elements really help to contribute to that restorative ability or restorative space within the workplace or school. So we can't all do this, not feasible, but there are steps that we can do with regard to design to help achieve this. Here's another situation, and big time, bottom line, hospitals, therapy, and healing. A number of hospitals, because of research, Roger Ulrich in particular, some of his work about post-surgery recovery, are now committed to installing or either in new design or retrofitting healing gardens. And where once the focus was on patients, people being able to step into these places or view them, now hospitals are realizing that staff need these spaces as well, because being in the medical situation, you're making a lot of quick decisions, diagnostics take a lot of this directed attention, you're dealing with family and friends with some very sensitive topics and difficult decisions, so staff need and find these places valuable to step out as well and take a break. Again, there are now people who are doing design to aid healing in hospital and therapy situations. These are the elements that seem to be quite helpful, that they are soothing, that they are distracting, and not distracting in the sense of jarring. There are some studies that, or a study done by Roger Ulrich, and one hospital installed abstract art. And people responded, it's such a poor way to it, they actually had to yank the art out. It was not only not providing any respite, it was way too distracting for people who are in these situations of high stress, some anxiety, and physical incapacity. And then calm focus. So a water feature, a pleasant sculpture or piece of art, something then that provides, if you will, a focus for meditation, reflection, contemplation while in these places. Here's another study. Again, the effectiveness of nature. Patients going through or undertaking bronchoscopy. Wow, after reading this article, I hope I never have to do this procedure. Not fun at all. So even with anesthetic, local anesthetic or analgesic painkillers, still a good bit of pain. And people, so not only a view from a window, but a simulation. More and more studies are being done with simulations if there may not be actual nature to be able to view. And what did they find? Well, the people who had a view of nature reported better pain control, a feeling that they were able to deal with, cope with that pain in better ways. And again, here's an experience of nature, and then here's an outcome. What happens in between? Well, this distraction therapy, this is happening more and more. The idea that if someone is lying on a bed or a gurney and they're looking at the roof and there's nothing there and the walls are barren and all these beeping devices are around them, there's no distraction, and pain then just surges in and is part of your reckoning of what's going on, your consciousness. So distraction is a way to lessen that pain, and it may actually physiologically change the nervous system. That there may be, if you will, I'm oversimplifying, but sort of a channel, a sensation, our spinal cord and some of our brain systems. And by having a distraction, including nature, some of those pain signals are eliminated, compressed, or reduced. So more and more people are learning in these hospital situations about the value of nature as not only a distraction, but something that may be even mitigating the pain sensation. Lifespan. So this is something that's starting to emerge is, well, if we're young, how much do we need? How often? What kind? When we're elders, how much? How often? What kind? How big? So lifespan is of ever greater interest in these studies. And Richard Blue summarizes the value of nature for children, the need to be out, free-form play, exploration, creativity, role-playing, all of these things that help build our intellectual capacity and our creative capacities. and imagination as we not only are in a natural setting, but interacting with others within that situation. We have found in some of the studies that as children age in school, there are benefits of having nature views. This is a study by Rodney Matsuoka, very interesting. Simply having views for classrooms and cafeterias, a variety of positive outcomes. And again, what are the mitigating or mediating circumstances? We don't know all of that. It might be in part that attention restoration theory, might be some other things going on, including social interaction, but nonetheless, some remarkable positive consequences. And a colleague of mine, Jeff Donovan, is with the Forest Service, and he's one of those guys that for decades studied the economics of trees and wildlands, forest products, timber, and he's now venturing into urban. And so here are two of his studies that are quite interesting. He was able to get the birth records for the county of Portland, Oregon, Multnomah County. And then using remote sensing, he was able to get tree canopy and using GIS, overlay this data with buffers, certain distance buffers of houses and how many trees, what's the percentage canopy within that area surrounding the building. Here's what he found. And these outcomes within the statistics then you can control for economics, you can control for affluence, you can control for the various conditions of the neighborhoods and the households. And yet what he found was more trees and healthier children at infancy, at birth. What's going on there? We don't know exactly, but nonetheless, what happens if a child is of normal or better birth weight? It's a jump start on their life. If a child is underweight at birth, there are possible consequences that carry through, at least through several years, if not for the remainder of their lives. So here we are, trees and healthier birth weights at the very start of life. And then Jeff looked at the back end of life. So emerald ash borer, I understand, is now in your state. States to the north, wow, have they've really been battling the bug. And some neighborhoods, entire neighborhoods, the trees have been devastated. Tragic. So Jeff used this situation as a natural experiment, if you will. He went to counties, again was able to get public health data, and looked at death from cardiovascular disease and respiratory disease, and compared those communities that still have healthy canopy, residential, and those communities where the trees all died and they were removed. And there you see the result. Interesting. Higher mortality in those places not having trees. So what connects these numbers? We don't know yet. Much more to learn about it, but nonetheless, it's really striking to see both at the very outset of our lives and the back end of our lives, trees appear to have an important effect. So let me wrap things up here now. We, as Americans, have an incredible national park system. We have visitors that come from other parts of the world to look at our national parks, national forests, BLM lands, Bureau of Land Management lands. It's really a remarkable thing in our country. And this is a place this is about 3 hours from my home. And many of my students and many of my colleagues really still have the impression that one must leave the city to gain nature benefit. And yet we now know from the evidence that we don't have to go that far. We can look out the window, we can step out the door, and we gain benefit. And so what you do is so important. Yes, environmental benefits, clean air, clean water, those are the basics. We have to have that for livable communities. We have to have that for quality of life. But what you offer in your work and in your campaigns and communications, so much more in our communities. So what are the possibilities moving forward? What are some things that you can share, or what might be new research that's coming along? As I mentioned, many of the studies that I reported and that we've looked at are correlation. You have a plant, trees, park, and then an outcome. We really don't know what's going on between the two. So causal mechanisms. Dosage. How much? When? Where? How often? to fine-tune this benefit knowledge. So we can start maybe to even prescribe nature. Well, let's see, you're overweight. I'd like you to watch your diet. Here's some diet recommendations, and we're going to hold off on the meds. I would like you to go to the park every day and walk for 15 minutes. Could we start to do that? What are the attributes? What are the specific attributes of parks and open space that encourage and enable these benefits? We're still coming to learn that. And we can wrap all of this, we can bundle all this together, hyperfunction, understand the economics, that's coming along as well. And then to better understand across life cycle and different groups of people, cultural groups, socioeconomic groups, are there specific things that aid them in different ways? And some of the work that's coming along, so I can't even tell you a place, a name. This is so preliminary, but it's so exciting. Brain scans. You're in an MRI, and you're viewing nature versus highly built urban environment with no green. And here you see differences in how the brain is responding. The upper band are those images where people are seeing green, lower band where people are seeing built environments. And very generally, what's going on there? So, built environment, no green. Where's all the activity? Front of the brain. That's where we do a lot of active processing. We take in information, we attempt to make sense of it, we process, we make decisions, we do actions. When we see green, areas of the brain that are firing are a little closer to those ancient places, the limbic system and that sort of thing. This is just coming along, the interpretation of this work, but it suggests that maybe viewing green is connected to the control of our greater body systems, the function of our organs, some of the hormonal systems and whatnot. This, I think, is where we start to see causal relationships. A little sticky here. All right. So, another way of summarizing all of this. Environmental fitness, we need that. Clean air, clean water, all of that. Wellness and support, or wellness support, that's that implying those places we need sort of the infrastructure of activity. Places to be out, to be active, to encounter nature on a daily basis. And then there are very specific places, supportive spaces and healing places where certain times in our lives, hospitals, work, schools, we need a little more defined sort of provision of nature. And then finally, amenity and aesthetic. And what I find is in many communities, amenity and aesthetic, beautification is the first message that is shared with the community about why all this should happen. And what I propose to you is, let's talk about beautification, but then let's punch through that. Let's talk about these other things that contribute to a perception of aesthetics, contribute to the perception of beautification, and yet are so much more important than to what we are and how we function. Let's bring this back. Psych 101, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You may recall this, yes? Physiology, right there at the base. Again, you've got to have that basic nature. But I suggest to you that the ongoing bands up this pyramid, safety, love, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization, are all achieved by people who are participating in greening projects. There was a young man here last night at the awards, Adam, an Eagle Scout, and you can't tell me that he wasn't working on belonging, esteem, and self-actualization in his tree planting project. It was all there. It was all bundled in. So again, another way of talking about why trees, parks, and open space are important in our communities. All right, so this is where I go out on the limb. This is where I end the whole thing. And I'm a scientist, and over the years, because some of this stuff early on was seen as sort of, oh, woo-woo, so I've been very careful to talk about these benefits in terms of scientific evidence. But we're on the cusp of something different. We're on the cusp of this kind of bursting out. So I was in Hawaii a couple of weeks ago, my daughter's graduation, and the graduation ceremony was so cool. And to my complete surprise, I was talked into going skydiving. Peer pressure. pressure, and a credit card. It's amazing what can happen. And this jumped ahead a bit. Let's see. Okay, so this is my big dive intellectually. I've been working with the TKF Foundation, which is based in Annapolis. It's a family foundation, and they have decided to spend down their endowment over the next few years. They have worked largely in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, funding and hosting what they call open spaces, sacred places. They have funded about over 100 of these in that area. They've decided to spend down their endowment. They're going to do 6 projects that will be announced in about a week. And each project will be a design, high-quality design of an open space sacred place with a research overlay. And I've been their research advisor through this process to help develop the call for proposals, to help select the projects. It's been a remarkable experience. And what they have found within this organic emergence, OSSPs, or open spaces, sacred places, within prisons, within hospitals, within schools, within communities, neighborhoods, variety of situations, these are the elements that appear to be really at the core of what makes up these places where people go to sit and think, contemplate, to grieve, to celebrate. It's really remarkable. And within each of these spaces, there is the iconic bench. So the foundation provides a bench, and tucked into the bench is a journal. And people are welcome to pick up the journal and write. And then the journal entries, the host organization sends these journal entries to TKF, and they've transcribed all of them. As their research advisor, we prepared these journal entries as a data set for some of the research teams. We looked at over 10,000 journal entries. But what we saw within that, the depth of feeling. There's a certain amount of, let's see, I heart patriots, or I heart Greg, or, that kind of thing. But some of these entries they're profound. They bring tears to your eyes, some of them, the situations that people are thinking about and talking about while in these spaces. So here's my deep dive. I am starting to realize that there's a readiness to talk about sacred in our green spaces. So yes, we talk about environmental benefits, we talked about utility, and then we talk about human well-being. But what is that next dimension? And I think it's sacredness. And I don't mean sacred with a capital S, as in religious or deep spirituality. I'm talking about sacred with a small s, every day, around us. That special place that we feel attached to, perhaps, or we must go to, and we want to be there for the memories that it brings, the recollections, the connections that we have with it. So I'm asking you through the day if you have any suggestions on how do we develop a vocabulary for sacred that we can take to the public arena. Imagine, I've been at public meetings, I'm at the podium, and I'm talking to electeds and a mayor. If I would say the word sacred, everything else I said before that would be dismissed. But I think there's a readiness to talk about this. So if you have any thoughts, experiences, suggestions, I would love to hear them, because we are attempting to build this vocabulary that makes it safe, if you will, to take the idea of sacred into the public arena. So that's skydiving enabled me, gave me courage to take a different kind of big leap. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to be here, to hear last night about the projects that were awarded, the people's great activities that have been awarded, and also with the comments already today. I'm looking forward to the other speakers and the other presentations in the day. I suspect that my slides will be available to you through Trees Forever, but also there's a little tab up on the top right of this website called What's New, and the presentation will be there as well, and as well as the few slides that I presented last night. So thank you, and I don't know, do we have time for a little time for questions? Okay, good. Or are you all ready for a bio break? I can understand that as well. Yes?
I have a question, Kathy. Coming from Iowa, this is a question that has to be asked. Has there been any research that compares visualizing or seeing native woodlands, native prairies versus 10 acres of corn or beans?
Oh.
Is it the green thing or is it the nature thing?
Yeah. So the question is, have there been studies of, say, for instance, within the Iowa context or similar states or similar places, the difference of nature response, say, to crop fields or cropland versus wooded areas? And I've had similar questions about, say, wooded areas, temperate woodland versus desert, for instance. There hasn't been a lot of research that specifically looks at those types of landscapes. What I can suggest, there have been a number of studies about landscape perception more generally. What are the preferences of landscape form and configuration? And what one finds is that there's an array of complexity. So, and we, again, we're not only, as a species, we're not only very efficient or very good at processing information, we crave information. We just seem to pursue it. So when we look at landscapes that have no complexity, we're quickly bored. All right, understand that, done, gone, moving on. Landscapes that have moderate complexity, and the complexity expressed as sort of savanna or park-like, with low foreground or low ground and trees interspersed. And it's not just because it's trees and grass, it's because the trees or the orientation of the vegetation offer the opportunity to understand what's in that space. You get a sense of its dimension, its scope, and that type of thing. And then on the other end of the scale, if you look at an image or a landscape that's dense and the complexity is very high, then again, people, they don't find it favorable at all. So I would imagine that kind of light forest, managed forest, would be more preferred than agriculture land, generally. But then within that, of course, people's background, their education, where they grew up, those sorts of things have an influence. Yes?
You had mentioned the brain scan slide that you had. I didn't know a lot about that particular research project or whatever, but...
Oh, I know a lot, but I can't say anything yet. It hasn't been published.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If I told you, I'd have to kill you, that kind of thing.
But the brain scan that was done, was
Yes.
that the same individual, or is that several?
Multiple individuals.
So, but was it showing them looking at an actual the same individual and then them looking at
I believe different people.
different people?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious, at the university, what are you doing to bring information programs to engineering students and the department here and vice versa, so that we're starting to inform our emerging city planners and folks who are going to create a future?
Very good question. And what I'm seeing is a greater. So there are what I find on my campus, and I don't know if this is happening everywhere, but there are bridging people. There are, if you will, the loose ties people. So within engineering, there are professors that are known for sort of being at the core of the curriculum or the core of the training program. And likewise in my unit, forest resources. But then there are often younger faculty, or maybe, if you will, sort of those rogue faculty that are the bridgers. And they're willing to cross over and try different ideas and seek different collaborators. So that happens within the university system. I find that the health and wellness message is really catching on. So environmental services, yes. But there's something about health now, perhaps because of the public costs, and perhaps Mary will speak about that a little bit more. The public costs of nature associations with health seem to be getting attention. And so where 10 years ago I would be invited to an event like this as, oh, wouldn't it be nice to hear a little bit about health, but really the event is about tree planting and pruning and forest management. Well, now entire events such as this, the entire day is dedicated to health. And with that, it seems to be a broader audience of people from education, from public health, engineering, and such. So it's gradually happening.
Yeah, one more. I had a question happens in climates like this when that green goes away in the winter and sometimes isn't replaced by something visually interesting like snow or
Brown snow. I remember Michigan brown snow.
Yeah. So what happens then? Should the green be brought inside for atrium and water features, or does it all still affect you the same way by looking at the brown and the visually interesting trees?
I personally am not aware of studies that have looked at those seasonal variations, so I really can't say. There are studies that have looked at particularly healing and therapy situations, and interior landscape does seem to help, interior landscape elements. So there's another question that is ripe for additional study. It may be that perhaps in the winter not seeing green, but maybe I'll step back from that a little bit. So as I mentioned, resource economists who have worked in more traditional sort of large landscapes, wild landscapes, one thing that they describe that actually has value to people is called existence value. So if you may know about Yosemite National Park, and you've never visited or never intend to visit that park, but knowing that it's there, some people are actually willing to pay a little bit of money, through taxes and whatnot. We value that system and those places. So it may be that there is an existence value carryover, if you will, because we appreciate the trees in the spring when they green out, the fall color and whatnot. I'm conjecturing that there may be some carryover, but we don't really know from any studies that I'm aware of.